This week's entirely true story has a very steampunk aesthetic. It's got air balloons, air pirates, inventors, spies, and a magical resort city above Altadena, California that doesn't exist anymore. This is the story of a whimsical professor who may have been the inspiration behind The Wizard of Oz. And this is also a little tribute to the city of Altadena that's been so devastated by the wildfires. Andrea Antony-Morr is joining me on the podcast this week to talk about all of it. She's from Los Angeles, currently living in Long Beach, and is a ghost appreciator and lover of LA history. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you. Hello, hello. Nice to see you.
It's been a brutal couple of weeks here in Los Angeles. How have you been doing with the fires, with everything?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone here feels the impact. I'm down in Long Beach where, our biggest impact is the air quality, but we all know people that have had to evacuate, have potentially lost homes. I myself, due to the nature of my job, I've been at the Pasadena Disaster Recovery Center quite a bit. I'm talking to folks that have lost everything and are just trying to, get their lives back together. But I want to say that people have been really positive, really kind. Everyone's just happy to talk to you and share with you. And it's actually really lovely. It's lovely to see the city of LA come together. I'm from here. I'm not surprised by it at all, but it's still really nice to see it.
I know all the volunteers have been amazing and they're the nicest people. I've been over at the evacuation center for large animals and there's dozens and dozens of people there every day helping out, mucking stalls. It's just so heartening to see our community come together. Before we get to that, I thought we'd do a little current events corner because current events are happening.
Current events are happening.
We have a new administration. And I think it's important, I'm realizing, to pay attention to the things that are changing and to make a little historical document of it and pay attention to what information isn't available anymore. And this just came up 15 minutes before we started recording. So I'm I'm going to talk about this. So 5 days ago, the G7 released a joint statement saying that Russia has funded and directed covert efforts to subvert elected governments using global disinformation and influence campaigns. And this was a statement and a press release that was on the State Department website, which is state.gov. And 5 days ago, it was there. And you go to it now, you try to find that statement, it's gone. You go to the link, it says file not found. And there is an archive State Department website, and it's not on that website either. And it's hard to find any information about Russia from G7 statements and G7 press releases on either the archive or the current State Department website. And I just think that's interesting. Because why, Andrea? Why would the current administration remove a page about Russia using disinformation to influence election campaigns? Why would our president want that removed from the State Department's website?
I mean, the world may never know. It's just so mysterious. I would imagine something to do with our new president, new/old president, having a friendly relationship with some leadership over in Russia, shall we say? And I simply can't imagine why that would be so weird. Definitely not a conspiracy.
So I thought I'd bring that up. I'll put the link to that statement where I was able to find it on another website in the show notes so that you guys can read it. But I think we should all be paying attention to, especially since we're history focused, pay attention to what history and information is being erased and what is the public being denied access to now that the administration is changing.
Yeah, and how we're going to see a lot of that over the coming weeks and months.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we've all seen the meme of I'm so tired of living through historical events. But truly, I am so tired of living through historical events.
So tired. I mean, remember the 90s? Stuff was happening, but not like this.
Not like this. Yeah, I miss the 90s every day.
Okay. I mean, we laugh because that that's how we process things. We could just go down the spiral of badness, but we're just going to laugh and move on to talking about what's the spookiest thing that happened to you recently, Andrea.
I think actually kind of the spookiest thing, unfortunately, is related to our new administration. But I don't think I'm someone who's like terribly like psychically aware. You know, I'm not someone like I've heard you say like, oh, like lights flicker a lot around you. Like I can't say I've ever had that. You know, I'm not connected in that way. But I definitely have been getting this feeling, you know, leading up to inauguration of like, ooh, shit's really bad. And it feels very like coming from somewhere else, not just from myself, you know? It's not just my own anxiety, like it's an energy I'm picking up. And it feels really spooky and creepy, and I don't like it. But also, as you just said, we take that, we turn that into action, we turn that into positive energy, into doing things. But it feels really spooky. Perhaps that's a weird word for it, but it feels spooky to be alive right now.
Yeah. And they want you to be so overwhelmed that you are not doing anything. But the best thing that we could do is keep on making art, because our art will reflect what's going on. You know, there will be more and more gatekeepers to putting up your stuff. So we just keep on plowing through the gates. And how are you feeling about social media? Like, I know basically the worst people own the social media platforms, but like if all of us leave them, then it will only be Nazi propaganda.
Right. Yeah, it's a really tough one because, I mean, we met through Instagram, right? We wouldn't even be talking right now if not for Instagram. So much of the community work that I've done or orgs I've been involved with has come from social media, not Facebook, because that's for, you know, old people, although I myself am quite old, however. So I feel really torn where I was like, oh, my gut is like, I want to get off these things. I want to delete TikTok. You know, it's going to change. I want to get off Instagram. You know, they're going to start feeding me right-wing content. Not that I would fall for it anyway, but I still don't want to see it. But I also think that there is, as you were just alluding to, there's a lot of value in folks like us and like-minded people staying in these platforms and continuing to push out the content that we create, that we want. Art is so powerful. Art speaks to people. Art creates truth. Art creates a way for you to see yourself when you can't find it other places. I mean, it's just so important. So as of this moment, I am still on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Really feeling good about Blue Sky, although I forget to open it because it's not part of my normal routine. And that's how I'm feeling. What about you?
Yeah, I did take a little break. I've been less active on Instagram pretty much since December, but that's just me being overwhelmed with work and everything. And I've been thinking like, you know what? I'm actually going to double down on putting out the memes and everything, because I think that's going to be the antidote to all of this stuff that's going on. So I'm going to maybe take a few weeks and make like 600 memes, which is what I do. I just like sit there and I just farm out a bunch of memes, and then I just schedule them out so that they hit people every single day. And that'll be my approach to fighting all this. Let's get into a crazy story about a balloon man. His life story is also going to give us a little history of America, because this guy is such a kind of bombastic, big talker, showman. We don't really know who he really is. So in telling this movie that we're presenting for you, the movie of this man's life, I'm going to tell you the parts where I'm going to take a little creative license and be like, wouldn't it be cool if this were a movie and this happens instead? So let's meet a guy with a really, really awesome name, Professor Thaddeus Konstantin Lowe.
Let it sink in.
Let it sink in. And I put down that I imagine him being played by Robert Downey Jr. You pictured Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah, I think it has to be someone quite, not that Robert Downey Jr. isn't eccentric, but I think Daniel Day-Lewis could really capture that weirdo energy that we're going for in our film.
And I really just like 5 minutes before I started this, I realized much of this plot takes place when he's like in his 20s and 30s. So it might actually be a younger actor. So someone who's a younger actor, someone who's weird.
Timothy Chalamet, he's hot right now, and he is very strange. What a strange little man.
I know. What a strange little man. I'm cheating because I already put him in another movie, but
casting him.
Timothy Chalamet would be good. I was also thinking if you go a little older, Robert Pattinson.
Please, don't even get that man can do everything.
Right. Or, Andrew Garfield. If you're going a little bit, we're going to make him a little bit more wholesome, but intense. That.
What about Sabrina Carpenter's ex-boyfriend? They just broke up. Barry Keoghan. He's weird.
Who?
Barry Keoghan. He was in Saltburn. I'm probably saying his last name. I'm embarrassing myself right now.
Oh, yeah. And who is in Banshees of Inisherin. Yeah. Yeah, he's a quirky fellow.
Who can age into Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah. Born, okay. And there's a few different days on when he was born. His great-great-grandchild has a website devoted to him and lists his birth date as April 20th, but Wikipedia says August 20th. And I'm sticking with Wikipedia because this guy has big Leo energy.
100% he does.
He's born in Jefferson, New Hampshire, and I'm going to call him Thad from now on. Thad's mother dies when he's just 11 years old, and there's no child labor laws back then. And his father sends him to a neighboring farm to be an indentured servant. I was going to say, I think we need a really industrious child actor for this part. Yeah, definitely a newcomer. But I'm also thinking like, wow, you don't have daycare. You send your children off to work. That is quite a pre-labor movement.
I was literally about to say that. Like, wow, thank you to the labor unions for no more child labor and also the weekends.
Yeah.
The power of the collective.
Right. And back then, the only school that was available to these children is during the winter months when the ground is too frozen to farm. So he only gets 3 months a year to devote to learning, but he loves learning. His teachers even give him their own books because they don't have school books. But the kid's like, I want to read. I want everything. And the teachers are like, here, read this, And he's always looking at the sky and watching the clouds. And he's asking, the big questions. What is life? What's up there? What's in the sky? And the people who are these farmers who he's working for are just like, we have too much work to do for you to be asking these questions about such things.
Yeah, working class struggle. That is what it is.
I know. And I have that trouble too, because I'm like, I need to work all day long. I don't have time to think about things. This is what they want.
That's what they want. And that is the one who's breaking the mold.
Yes. And on July 4th, pay attention to July 4th because it's going to come up again. July 4th, 1843, young Thad decides that freedom is his rightful heritage. And he runs away from the farm and he heads to Portland, Maine, which is 100 miles away. And he walks there. And he's 11 years old.
Yeah, I don't like walking around the block. You know what I mean? Like, that's very impressive. Although at 11, you have a lot of energy. Different now. Good for him.
You do, but it's hot, I'm sure. Yeah. It's the middle of summer.
That's right.
Did they have water bottles back then? What did you do if you got thirsty?
Yeah, you had a water bottle. You had like a little calfskin.
How long did that take? It probably took a week.
Yeah. And the fact that he made it, didn't get, eaten by a wolf or whatever in between.
Amazing.
Yeah, truly, meant to be. He was meant to make it.
And he, at 11 years old, he wants to find someone who will allow him to study, and he wants to be apprenticed to that person. And some interesting things happen around this period. On April 13th, 1844, The Sun publishes a story of a man named Monarch Mason who crosses the Atlantic by balloon in 3 days. And the headline reads, "Astounding news by express via Norfolk. The Atlantic crossed in 3 days. Signal triumph of Mr. Monarch Mason's flying machine." which sounds amazing. The story turns out to be a hoax written by Edgar Allan Poe. And the Sun realizes this and issues a retraction 2 days later.
It's so funny. Like Edgar Allan Poe, like what made you do that? Like, why aren't you writing more like Gothic poetry? I love that for him though.
I know. I love the chaos of Edgar Allan Poe's life. And I don't know if it was like an accident, like this story that he made up of the balloon passage got published somewhere. And then the Sun read it. Someone at the Sun read it thinking it was true and published it. Or if Edgar Allan Poe is so chaotic that he's like, I'm gonna do this for
the laugh.
Yeah.
I used to believe that version, that he was doing it to be a troll.
Yeah. Just to be a menace to society. And I think more of us should publish hoaxes. Well, honestly, we live in the age of disinformation. Maybe not. But if it's
like a fun hoax.
So the story captures Thad's imagination, and he works odd jobs and saves up enough to get on a boat to Boston to meet up with his older brother. And there, Thad and his older brother work for a shoe and boot maker. And they're very, very good because when they were young, they hung out with the indigenous kids who taught them how to make moccasins. And they learned little tricks like if you oil your knife, it will slide through the leather quicker. And the shoemakers were all like, whoa, these kids, they know all the secrets and we've been in this business for years. And so they do pretty well for themselves. And he and his brother experiment with ballooning for the first time. And they even use a poor cat as a test subject, which is kind of traumatizing. They put a cat in a basket and make a balloon go up. And they said in the story, this was the story published by the great-great-grandson, that they then brought the cat down and the cat was fine and ran off. I hope that is true. Yeah. But they also attach lights to their balloons, and the townsfolk report seeing strange lights in the sky. And they're the early 1840s UFO hoaxes, which is fun.
I love that. Yeah. And then I want to know about every single UFO sighting going back to the dawn of time. That's what I want to know about.
Have you seen the 1717 painting called The Baptism of the Christ?
No.
It is an amazing painting that shows an angel or like something, God or whatever. It's a UFO. And I'll see if I can Google it because now it's on my mind.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I love it.
Right?
Really good. 10 out of 10.
It's got like a flat disc in the sky and lights shining down. And it's definitely a UFO. And I feel like the painter of that saw a UFO and was like, that's an angel. I'm going to paint it in my painting.
I mean, we don't have proof that UFOs aren't angels or that angels aren't aliens, right? Yeah. I mean, I know I'm just quoting Ancient Aliens now, which is a show that I actually don't really enjoy. But the point being, we don't know.
Right? Exactly. I just think it's cool. And I think of old paintings, like there's a George Washington painting that shows a UFO in it too, that have UFOs in it. I love it. My favorite thing. Yeah. So with that, a bunch of TLDR stuff happens, and a child of Thaddeus's stepmother shows up at Thad's house with a handbill that reads, Professor Reginald B. Dinkelhoff. His name is Dinkelhoff, world-renowned chemist, reveals wonders of science. And Professor Dinkelhoff is giving a lecture that evening at the town hall. And of course, Thad, being all into learning, is stoked to go. And during the show, when the professor asks for a volunteer from the audience to help demonstrate his experiment with hydrogen and soap bubbles, Thad is like, pick me, pick me, pick me. Being a Leo, he races to the stage. Dinkelhoff notices that Thad is a delight to have in class and asks him to stay on as a paid permanent assistant, which is the dream.
A nerdy child. What a dream.
And so Thad starts traveling the road with Professor Dinkelhoff. And this is the mid-1800s. So we're imagining crinolines, hoop skirts, sideburns, top hats. They do science shows with chemistry experiments. It's all very steampunk vibed. And after 2 years, Professor Dinkelhoff retires, and Thad buys the show and takes over, and he's a natural showman. And at this point, he's only 20 years old, and he is now Professor Lowe?
Well, he's also a Leo, as you said. So this makes complete sense. I'd love to see his entire star chart. Love to know.
I know, right? And I really love that there's so many of these men in these stories. Last week is a man who just decides to start calling himself Colonel. And, Thad, he had probably a few months of school, and he's like, I'm Professor Lowe. Meanwhile, I actually teach at colleges, but I'm like, I'm not really a professor because I'm just an adjunct, even though I've been teaching at colleges for 15 years.
Yeah. The audacity of a white man is a consistent theme from the beginning of time. And I love that. That's so great. More of that.
So Thad saves up and he buys a portable laboratory and starts attending school, actually, to study more science and medicine. And he's obsessed with aeronautics. His goal is to build an aerostat, which is a lighter than air aircraft that relies on buoyancy to stay in the air. And powered aerostats are called airships, and unpowered ones are called balloons. And then this is where the romantic subplot kicks in. While doing one of these shows in New York, he locks eyes with a young French woman named
Leontine Augustine Gachon.
Ooh, say that again.
Leontine Augustine Gachon.
And they marry after just a week of courtship.
Do you think it's because Leo is in her name?
Probably. It just makes sense, I feel like. And for their honeymoon, they head down the Mississippi River. And according to Thad's son, as reported in a 20th century newspaper, they put on marionette shows to pick up a little extra money, as one does on their honeymoon. He uses a pseudonym, Professor Carlincourt, to hide his identity, because he's known as the chemistry professor. He doesn't want to be known as the marionette professor. You got to have two distinct identities for your brand. He knows this.
And just a shout out to your previous episode on the Magic Castle, which I have been to and found terrifying because of the amount of marionettes that are inside. So many. And I was very unhappy. So I also want to hide who I was if I was doing marionettes. So
you have a marionette phobia.
100%.
And what is it about them that's so scary?
I mean, it's definitely the uncanny valley piece of it. It's like the strings being controlled by someone else. It's their creepy little faces. Like I like clowns, but I had to teach myself to like clowns, and I cannot teach myself to like marionettes. I don't want to. They're not for me. They're for Professor Carlincourt, not me.
And finally, in April of 1857, Thad is just 27 at this point. He succeeds in building his first balloon and has his first tethered flight, and which means it goes up in the air, but it doesn't go anywhere because it's tied to something on the ground. And he charges people $1 for a tethered flight and $5 for a free flight. And by the way, in today money, that is $36.28 is $1, and $5 was $181.38 in today money. So every time someone wants to go up in a balloon and fly around it a little bit, he's getting $181. That's amazing. Yeah. In 1858, he starts building a larger balloon that Leontine wants to name the Enterprise.
Starship.
But isn't that amazing? Like, I kind of wonder if Gene Roddenberry was like, what should I name my ship? I know. I'm a fan of
Professor Lowe.
Yeah. So I'm going to name my ship after his balloon. Done. And, he was a more famous, bigger deal, like in the 1950s. And people back then knew who he was, because it was only like 100 or so years from the Civil War, which is where he made his big famous time. So 1858 is when the first attempts are made to have a transatlantic telegraph cable. And they actually lay a cable at the bottom of the ocean that goes all the way from the US to England. And after the first telegraph is actually successfully transmitted on August 16th, 1858, from Queen Victoria to President James Buchanan. Doing it once was fine. Doing it a second time doesn't work. The cable fails. There were things that needed to happen technology-wise that weren't there at the time. So Thad starts talking about crossing the Atlantic on a balloon. And of course, his haters are like, that is silly, Thad. But Thad is rich, at this point, and he thinks he can do anything.
Oh, doesn't that remind you of a certain gentleman pirate?
I know. Everything is seed bonnet coated in this show. So he prepares to launch his transatlantic flight at the intersection of Fifth Avenue and 42nd Street in New York. But the gas company he hires isn't able to get the amount of gas that he needs to launch, and he has to admit failure, with which the haters love this, right? In 1861, Thad teams up with another professor, and who knows if he was a legit professor or just someone who called himself professor. You could call yourself professor back then. Everyone was like, okay. So Professor Joseph Henry of the Smithsonian Institution helps him out, and he becomes Thad's biggest benefactor. And they try a test flight from Cincinnati to Washington, but the balloon flies 800 miles off course, which I just can imagine that's terrifying.
Yeah.
To South Carolina during the Civil War. And by the way, South Carolina is in Confederate territory.
In case you forgot, you couldn't remember by all the Confederate flags that still fly there.
So he's flying over South Carolina, and the men in the field see this strange balloon floating over, and they actually are freaked out. They're like, what the fuck is that? They've never seen anything like that before. The women, though, these women named Teresa Hames and Susie Palmer are actually brave enough to go out and be like, what's this guy in this balloon? And Thad throws down a rope and is like, hey, you guys, can you help me out here? And they pull on the rope and they bring the balloon down. And everyone on this farm is understandably freaked out. Is he a Yankee spy? Is he some kind of devil? But Thad, of course, is a showman. So I'm sure he uses his charisma to put them at ease. And they take him to their cabin and they feed him cornbread. And by the way, in this cabin, there are 2 enslaved children. So just in case you forgot what was happening in the South at that time. And if this were a movie, this is where I would have that scene where Thad is looking at the 2 enslaved children and is like, I know these guys got me out of the sky, but fuck these Southern rednecks. And that's when he gets his idea about what he's going to do next. Cause he's like, we got to put a stop to this. This is BS.
Yeah. Crucial scene.
Yeah, crucial scene. So the farmers load that up along with his balloon onto a wagon pulled by 6 mules, and they drive him to Unionville, South Carolina to catch a train, which I'm sure the train ride must have been awkward. You have a huge balloon.
Right.
Do you put it on your lap? Are the people next to you looking at you? It's like
my vision is the balloon is pushing up against the windows, and so no one can see outside for the entire train ride.
And 70 years later, on April 20th, 1931, a monument would get put on that exact same spot where the balloon landed in South Carolina. And as of 2009, there's a historical marker there. And there's been postage stamps all about this that were published in 1983. And there was an airmail letter sheet that was published in 1995. So this is kind of a historically important event. And 3 months after Thad's accidental landing in South Carolina in June 11th, 1861, Thad meets with President Lincoln. And this came after Professor Henry recommended Thad to Lincoln, was like, hey, I know this guy who has balloons. He wants to do something to help the Union Army, maybe because he saw enslaved children in the cabin in South Carolina and was like, I want to put a stop to all this. So that could be the motivation there. I'm just making that up though. And he brings his balloon, the Enterprise, to Lincoln, shows him how it works. He actually flies up in the air above the White House. And then they send up a telegraph cable with him, and he's able to telegraph from thousands of feet in the air. I don't know how, maybe hundreds of feet. I don't know. And is able to say, this is what I see from up here. Your roof needs fixing, that sort of thing. And then Lincoln's like, cool, I love this. I'm going to appoint you the chief aeronaut of the Union Army Balloon Corps.
I love that. That makes no sense. And I love that man. He's like, oh, you crazy man, young man with a balloon with a big name. Yeah, you're my chief aeronaut now. That didn't exist before, but now it does. But you know what? That's great. That's ingenuity in action.
And so Thad builds 7 gas-filled balloons for President Lincoln, and he performs aerial reconnaissance on the Confederate Army. And which is crazy because when he actually did crash land in South Carolina, he was like, no, I'm not a spy. And now he's like, I'm a spy, bitches.
I love that for him.
And the balloons are named the Eagle, the Constitution, the Washington, the Union, the Intrepid, the Excelsior, and the United States. All very patriotic.
Very patriotic names, yes. And that's the name of my next dog, the Excelsior.
Yeah, this is actually good listed names for dogs or a litter of kittens.
Yes, very that.
Now, the members of this corps, I don't know if it's pronounced corps or corpse. I'm going to say
it is corps. The T is silent.
Okay. So now the members of this corps have a whole bunch of drama amongst each other. Balloon bro drama, which I imagine is like horse girl drama, but maybe a little bit more. And I'm sure it could make a whole movie and it's very interesting, but I want to skip ahead because this is not the point of the whole story that we're telling. But one of the accusations is that Thad had 2 favorite balloons that he didn't want anyone else to use because he planned to buy them for himself after the war was over. And I just think that's cute.
I do think that's cute. And I'm going to vote that it was the Intrepid and the Excelsior were his favorite. I'm going to guess that.
Yeah, because he put thought into those 2 names. Yeah. The others were kind of generic. But because the Union has their balloon corps, the Confederates feel that they need to have their spy balloons too. And this is where you have the montage of the Confederate Army trying to have their own balloons and not knowing what the fuck they're doing, and just like fail montage. You know, people setting their balloons on fire, people like going away. And I don't know what happened to Colonel Hicklebum. We'll send a message to his family, letting them know that he died courageously in battle. But he just is.
He's lost. He went away.
Even though the Union's balloon corps is extremely successful, they do what they're going to set out to do. They're not taken seriously by the military because these are all civilian ballooners. They're putting their lives at risk, though. And there's a certain captain named Sirius B. Comstock, who I don't know if he's related to the guy who passed the Comstock Act, which made birth control and pornography illegal. But I'm going to say that, yes, he is. He resents that Thad is being paid more than him. So when the balloon corps fall under like his purview, he reduces Thad's pay. And of course, if you're doing good work and you're working hard and your pay gets reduced, you're going to be a little offended. And so he was. And so he's like, fuck you, I quit. And the balloon corps gets disbanded. And this is where this whole story of the balloon corps is why a lot of historians say that he was the inspiration behind the character Oz and the Wizard of Oz.
Can I just say, I cannot escape wicked discourse. It follows me like a ghost. That's my other spookiest thing, is wicked discourse is everywhere. And like, I saw it and I was like, this is fine. And maybe that's controversial. But I was like, yeah, it's fine. And everyone's losing their minds, and I can't escape it. Everywhere I go, there it is. And here it is again, haunting me.
Well, and what kind of discourse are you hearing?
Ariana should get an Oscar. And, this is like the most amazing story of overcoming adversity. I'm like, is it? I mean, I guess. And then, of course, before TikTok got taken over this weekend, I watched like a 13-part TikTok on the book Wicked, which is complete insanity. So I'm thinking about that while I'm watching the movie. It's a lot. And I wish people would just, we still have Wicked Part 2 coming out. We got to talk about something else.
Yeah. Wow. And part of me I wonder, is that genuine, or is it the companies hiring the influencers to do these like long discourses on the movies to get conversation going, to make it seem like a thing? So people are like, I guess I got to check out Wicked.
Oh my God. And I fell for it because I was like, I don't really want to see this, but I guess I will. So it worked on me.
Exactly. But so yeah, this is our contribution to Wicked discourse.
Moving on.
This is the guy that inspired the Wizard of Oz. And after the war, Thad retires to Norristown, Pennsylvania, and starts inventing all the things. He invents a precursor to the modern refrigerator, and he's able to send fruit on like a train to where fruit shouldn't be. And he figures out a way to make gas heating and lighting inexpensive so that everyone can have heat and lights, not just rich people. He wins all the awards. And he claims to be the reason that the U.S. established a weather bureau.
And you know what? I believe him. It is him.
I'll give that to you. Okay. Because it's a weird thing to lie about.
Right.
In 1890, he and his family moved to California, where he buys the Pasadena Opera House, which doesn't exist anymore. And he uses that as his offices, and he sets up several ice plants, factories that make ice. That's what it means.
Okay.
He sets up a gas company and the Citizens Bank of Los Angeles, which later gets bought by the Crocker Bank and then gets absorbed by Wells Fargo. And this is all that came from a Medium article that I will put in the show notes. Thad makes friends with a bunch of elite Californians, including Andrew McNally, the McNally of Rand McNally.
Yeah.
Map people. And when you are friends with the map people, they put your name on maps. And so Andrew McNally put Professor Lowe's name on Mount Lowe. It's like, we need to name this mountain. We'll name it Mount Lowe after my friend. And that gets printed on all the maps. And I don't know if that's what's going to happen with the Gulf of America.
Oh, my God.
Because I'm not going to be calling it the Gulf of America.
No. And honestly, I think Rand McNally would agree with you. It is, in fact, the Gulf of Mexico. So
it's the Gulf of Mexico. He also makes friends with the California governor and a guy named Collis Huntington, who is a Big Four railroad guy. And I'm sure he's responsible for the Huntington Gardens.
Which are lovely.
Yeah, which are lovely. And he sets out to build a resort in the San Gabriel Mountains. And during this time, Thad is also having a lot of financial issues. And he takes out a loan to convert the Pasadena Opera House into a hotel, but the plans never come together. He builds a huge mansion on Orange Grove Avenue, and that avenue becomes known as Millionaires Row because all the rich people are there, all the big houses are there. And unfortunately, he defaults on his mortgage. See, in 1893, there's a financial panic in the U.S. that causes a major depression. It's the most serious economic downturn until the Great Depression. But still, despite everything, even with Thad's finances getting really, really dicey, he has this vision for a Mount Lowe resort. He wants to construct a railway that goes up the mountain, and there's going to be a whole white city nestled among the canyons and the waterfalls. And he wants the railway trip to these various hotels that he has planned up in the mountains to be the grandest ride on earth. And once it's all finished, guests will be able to purchase a 2-hour round trip from Los Angeles for $2.50, which is $91.75 in today money. And I kind of love how his whole life is about getting people high.
Yeah, totally.
Like, I want to get people up in balloons. I want to get people up in mountains.
I mean, I think I would pay $90 right now to take a luxurious train ride up a mountain. You know,
it's 2 hours, and then there's a hotel at the top that you'll stay there. And I think it's cool. And there's also lots of amenities up there. Yeah.
And it's beautiful, right? Well, I mean, maybe not presently, but yes, I would pay that money for sure.
Yeah. So this vision, it's not only expensive, it's very tough work. There's a ridge called Granite Gorge that took 8 months to cut a grade through. Gangs of workers have to carry rubble up 50 plus yards where it's then dumped down the side of a canyon. The cement for the bridge has to be carried up on the backs of workmen because the burros refuse to travel up a 62% grade. But still, I hope those workers got paid well. But still, Thad persists. He imagines the start is going to be this really long, steep incline from the base of Rubio Canyon to the first peak, which is Echo Mountain. And this great incline is about 2,500 feet, and it rises 1,200 feet in elevation. Passengers ride on a trolley called the White Chariot, and the incline starts out at a slope of 57% and increases to almost 62% before dropping back to 52% and finishing at 39% at the top. And because of the bends, you can't see from top to bottom or bottom to top. But I just imagine this great incline, like very roller coaster energy, like the first lift off of a roller coaster. And
I was going to add to, like, when we were getting ready for this episode, I was looking through some of the Mount Echo weeklies, and there were all these quotes from different people saying, like, oh, this is the safest way to travel, and it's an engineering marvel. So, I mean, other people, you know, bought into the vision. All of these ideas he had, as crazy as it sounded, it worked.
Yeah. And keep in mind, he's doing all this while, like, financially not doing well and, like, having to scramble for money and get people on board with loaning him money and stuff. And so he's using his showman's, you know, his charisma and all of that to make this thing happen.
And his dedication to the dream. It matters to him more than anything else. He's going to make it happen.
Yeah. At the base of the Great Incline is the Rubio Pavilion, which is the first hotel. It's a 12-room hotel. It opens July 4th, 1893. And July 4th was the day that Thad left the farm when he was 11 to walk to Portland, Maine. And I think that's amazing.
Yep, it was the right choice all along.
Yeah, despite the fact that the financial panic happened 2 months earlier, Thad spares no expense in making opening day memorable with, among other things, 2,000 illuminated lanterns, which is not a fire risk at all.
It's giving Stede Bonnet books on a boat, right?
It's giving 2 chandeliers,
yeah,
and a fireplace, surrounded by bits of paper on a boat. And this is from the Mount Lowe Historical Society. The kitchen in the Rubio Pavilion is supplied with the freshest produce from the numerous farms in Altadena, including Lowe's own farm, with seating for 80 and a finely decorated room lit with the latest electric bulbs. Dinner or lunch is a convenient train ride away for Pasadena or Los Angeles residents and tourists. As the dining room and canyon pathways are only an hour's train ride from Pasadena, guests could come up for dinner or lunch. The ambience is comfortably elegant in a Victorian setting with wainscoted wooden walls, folded linen napkins and tablecloths graced with canyon flowers and a centerpiece vase on each table. Ample light shines in from the down canyon, floor to ceiling windows with the bright foothill sun reflecting the sycamore leaves and the canyon shrubs in greenish hue. Thad built 1,000 steps where tourists can climb and see 9 waterfalls, pools, grottos, a suspended boulder, and a mere lake. But Rubio Canyon is just the beginning. He got the Great Incline Railway to work after all. And at the top of that incline is Mount Echo Mountain. And that is where he builds his next hotel. And the Echo Mountain House is at 3,500 feet, and it's completed in November of 1894. And it claims to be the only mountain hotel open year round. So it opens in almost wintertime. Rooms start at $15 a week. That's $550.47 in today money, which is actually a really, really, really good deal. Like, I don't know if you could stay a week at a hotel anywhere for $550.
No, you cannot. That's literally impossible. Maybe a Motel 6, but you won't like it. And also, I think it's a little bit more expensive.
So that's wild to me.
And this is like luxury as well.
Yeah, this is luxury in the mountains with huge staff. Crazy.
Yeah.
So if this hotel costs $63,000 to build, that's $2,300,000. Let's just say, reading long numbers.
I literally can't read long numbers. If you tell me anything, I'd be like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I know. So I'll just say it's $2,300,000 around there in today money, which actually is also not that expensive for a hotel. I mean, 2 million is like kind of a nice house in Studio City. Like, it's not like a 70-room luxury hotel. So
yeah. He must have got a deal somewhere. It was his charisma.
Or how about inflation? The cost of things is just crazy ridiculous now.
Well, that's true. Yeah, we have lost all sense of what things cost in this
Yeah,
days.
yeah. So the hotel features 70 rooms, a social hall with a fireplace, Persian rugs, and a grand piano, a large dining room with a balcony where an orchestra performs. He's got an orchestra there, a smaller ladies' drawing room, a billiards room, a bowling alley, a barbershop, and shoe shine stand, all with electric lights and heating provided by gas pumped from Pasadena in the valley below. A souvenir shop called The Bazaar is stocked with spoon, postcards, trays, photographs, and other memorabilia for guests to purchase.
A gift shop out the back. I'm going to keep doing this.
Their guests can enjoy an astronomical observatory, car barns, dormitories, repair facilities, a casino and dance hall, and a menagerie of local fauna. And there's a silver fox farm there with 1,500 foxes. And it's not like that island in Japan where you can just like hang out with foxes. They're being bred to kill and sell their pelts. So they're in cages and stuff, which is kind of fucked.
We'll leave that out of the movie.
I know. In my movie, it's just like a huge pasture of foxes, right, and people go lay down in the field and a bunch of foxes lick their face.
Yeah.
There's also a tamed lynx and 4 albino raccoons. On December 14th, 1895, there's a new hotel that's opened. So we're up to 3 hotels now. This one is the Alpine Tavern, and it opens December 14th. It's like smack dab in the cold weather season. And this later gets renamed the Mount Lowe Tavern. There's a video that I will drop in the show notes that like is old film footage that shows you the whole journey to get there and all around. It's very, very cool. And to get there, you have to take the electric trolley from Echo Mountain, which crosses 18 bridges and passes 127 curves. And Henry Ford even makes a silent documentary film of the trolley ride. He places the cameras on various cars to film the journey. It's 5,000 feet above sea level. It's a 22-room hotel and has a pool and a tennis court. And a room is $12.50 per week, which is $469.65 in today money, which is crazy cheap.
That's a crazy good deal. He's too nice.
Yeah. There's mule and pony rides, and there's Inspiration Point, which has viewing tubes, and they're still there, by the way, where you can see Catalina Island and Redondo Beach and Seal Beach, all from the San Gabriel Mountains. And one of the attractions is something called the One Man and a Mule Railroad. And the mule is named Herbert, and he actually pushes a trolley from Inspiration Point to Panorama Point along 3 miles of tracks. And adults are charged 35 cents and children 20 cents. And why did Herbert push the car instead of pull it like usual? There was a story of one of the operator's sons saying that because Herbert ate so many of the leftovers from the tavern, he had flatulence and had really bad gas.
Okay, I'm going to do a Seinfeld reference, not a Our Flag reference.
Okay.
That's literally an entire plot of a Seinfeld episode I watched yesterday because I've seen every episode 1,000 times. They must have gotten inspired from the story of Herbert and his flatulence problems.
What's the Seinfeld?
It's the one where George needs to sneak a rye bread into Susan's parents' house, his fiance, because his crazy parents stole it after they brought it. And so he asked Kramer to take Susan's parents for a little like horse cart carriage ride. So like, oh, cute. You go out in your carriage. I'll put the bread back while you're out. You won't see me doing it. And then Kramer had been feeding the horse beefarino, which, you know, I think as a horse human probably know, horses don't eat that. Yeah, great episode. One of the best.
That's hilarious. I do know someone fed my horse a burrito at some point because I saw
what do you mean? Why would they do that?
I don't know. I just saw like burrito sauce like all over her. And I was like, I guess someone fed my horse a burrito. She was fine.
I mean, hey, she walked it off. She was all right.
So by 1899, there's 4 hotels completed, but ridership starts to dwindle. See, that has big ideas, but being realistic and considering logistics isn't really his thing. There's only one way to get to Altadena back then, and the LA Terminal Railway, which ran from Terminal Island in San Pedro to the mountains, it only ran twice daily. And once the sparkle of newness wears off, it's really hard to get people to like plan a trip out there. And I mean, because I can imagine too, it's like, oh, let's do the railway to the hotel thing. We'll do it this summer. Cool, we did it. Right. Would you do it again? Would you do it like every summer?
Yeah, no, I mean, or even for them to really make money, you'd really have to go multiple times a year. Right.
Yeah.
And like, I don't even like leaving Long Beach in my car ever.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine.
Yeah. I mean, I've lived in LA without leaving for the last 4 years. I've been to Santa Monica once.
Nice. Really good.
So this resort had huge numbers of staff to keep it all operational. And there just wasn't enough people coming to fund its operation. So imagine Disneyland, but there's only like one train that goes there. It only goes there twice daily. And it's really hard to get to. Speaking of Disneyland, maybe it's because I worked there in grad school and I like did everything, but I haven't been to Disneyland in 15 years.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm not a Disney adult by any means. But it's pretty cool.
I know. I should. But like, yeah, but Disneyland makes sense because there are some people who like go multiple times a year. But this place, it's not quite Disneyland, and it's hard to get to.
But really interesting fun fact, in that Medium article that you found, they did claim that this whole railway was part of the inspiration for Disneyland.
Which makes sense because that Disneyland railway, like that kind of goes through all these different things. Like I think there's even like a mountain alpine. Isn't there a goat thing? Yeah,
and you like go to like a sort of like Grand Canyon type room, and there's like a goat in there. I can definitely see the one-to-one connection there.
And also they have the monorail. So they have the little train Disneyland, and then they also have the Matterhorn too, which is like a railway in mountains.
Yep.
So lots of not only 1-to-1, but I would say like 1-to-3.
Yes, 1-to-3.
So the railway goes into receivership, and the various assets start getting acquired by new owners. Then in 1900. A fire engulfs Echo Mountain, and that glistening white Echo Mountain Hotel is completely destroyed. And he didn't have enough insurance for it, so it never gets rebuilt. And
sounds familiar.
I know. And since those mountains were just on fire a few weeks ago, we can just kind of see that, so fires happen a lot there. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's not a good idea to build things there.
And also, we see that insurance companies are to work with and often unscrupulous.
Yes, yeah. And I mean, something could be said for like, what if Professor Lowe burnt his own mountain to collect insurance money because he was having a whole bunch of other financial difficulties?
Maybe we include that in the movie.
I mean, that could be like something he gets accused of in the movie.
Right.
He's like,
right.
no.
Yeah. That's good. That's juicy.
Yeah. So in 1906, the powerhouse that powers the chain that pulls up the white chariots that go up the Great Incline is finally repaired. But in 1909, a huge storm hits and a flash flood buries one of the employees' children in mud and injures a bunch of people. And this is just going to be disaster after disaster. On January 16th, 1913, Thad passes away sadly at the age of 80 in his daughter's home. He's pretty much has no money at that point, and his wife dies a year later.
Leontine.
I know. And in 1928, another storm hits and winds blow apart the observatory. The curator runs inside to try and collect the expensive lenses, and the building is crumbling around him. And I do not know if he actually saved the lenses or not, but he manages to escape just as the building completely crashes around him. And in 1936, another fire blazes across Mount Lowe, and the Mount Lowe Tavern blows down, and the railway goes out of business as well. And in 1937, a rainstorm hits and destroys the last of the railway. It strands the caretakers there for 17 days, which is amazing to think about.
Yeah.
Imagine being stuck on a mountain for 17 days with your coworkers. That would be
and like a crumbling remnant of a hotel or whatever hotels are left at that point.
I mean, that's a horror movie right there.
I was just going to say that. Like, oh, that's like, I can't think of the movie that has like the ghost
Shining.
Yeah. It's like The Shining, but couple that with like, you know, like The Hills Have Eyes.
Yeah. I mean, it's got a lot of things. It's got like, you know, Native American burial ground, spirits from the mountains. There's Bigfoot stories up there. So you could have a Bigfoot movie, horror film, being stranded in the mountains. A lot of directions you could go with this. By 1941, all the remaining buildings are abandoned and the metal and machinery parts are repurposed for World War II. And from the 40s to the 60s, a lot of the foundations are dynamited to prevent hazards. And in 1962, they dynamite that powerhouse that was pulling up the chariot for the final time. And in 1993, the Mount Lowe Railway site is listed on the National Registry of Historic Places, and the Forestry Service dedicates some land to be a monument for some of the artifacts that have been found there. And the Echo Mountain Trail and the Sam Merrill Trail will take you to the Sam Merrill Monument, which is the former site of the observatory, Inspiration Point, and Mount Lowe Tavern. If you want to go there, see if you can find anything.
Maybe not right now.
Maybe not right now, yeah. But gosh, if there was anything left, it's probably been burned more.
Yeah.
Or maybe the fire like exposes some sort of metal stuff that's still in the ground, and maybe you might be able to, after everything blows away, might be able to see something there. I don't know. The Inspiration Point shelter is still there, although check my notes on that because the fire, maybe it destroyed it. I don't know. We'd have to. But according to like a few months ago, the Inspiration Point shelter is still there. There's viewing tubes there, and you can see a reproduction of an echophone, which is like a megaphone that you shout into, and then it makes echoes in the mountain. And there's a love seat there where Thad and Leontine used to sit.
That's cute.
Very romantic. And during the 40 years where it was operational, 3 million people rode the railway. But this is a great example that the ocean eventually takes everyone's sandcastles.
Yeah. What a beautiful history.
Yeah, I know, right? Too bad it all happened before color photography.
I know.
Because I would love to see color photos, color videos, but we'll just have to imagine what it looked like. Did you find any other interesting facts about Thad or Mount Lowe?
I don't know if I found other interesting facts. The Disneyland one was really fun. I enjoyed that. Also from that same Medium article, apparently his granddaughter beat Amelia Earhart and became the fastest woman on Earth.
That's amazing.
But, sure. Of course, the family seems like they are very driven as people.
And the daughter, was she like fast in an airplane or in a car? What did she?
Let's see. So the granddaughter is Florence, nicknamed Pancho, Barnes, and he introduced her to her lifelong love of aeronautics, of course. So she turned her back on life as a society girl and began instead to be a Hollywood stunt woman. Love that for her. What a journey. She also, horse girl, training horses, doing stunts with the horses, and then started doing actual acting in the airplanes.
Oh.
And then she worked for some time as a pilot for Union Oil. And then after that, she formed the Mystery Air Circus, where she was actually parachuting from airplanes and doing stunts, which is wild. And then on August 4th, 1930, she reached speeds of 197 miles per hour. And that is when she beat Amelia Earhart.
And it sounds like that was in a plane. So that's
not running.
But she has a crazy story. I think we should do a whole episode on her.
Yeah. That's a lot of activities for one exciting person.
I mean, you got to think your grandfather was a Union balloon spy in the Civil War.
The Wizard of Oz character.
Inspired the Wizard of Oz. He built a railway in the San Gabriel Mountains. And so she's like, well, I guess got to carry on the legacy and just be as extra as possible.
Yeah, I love that for her. That would be another great movie, which we can think of casting for that. But I think something that stood out to me in this story, as someone who has lived in Los Angeles and from here and, my whole life pretty much, Los Angeles is such a city that like gives and takes away. And I just love that so much about this place. You have to be respectful of the natural climate that we live in.
Yeah.
We live in, what makes California unique, and the way that we can grow the crops that feed so much of the rest of the country, and, the beautiful weather we have here. Everyone wants to live here. We don't really have winter. It is a great place to be, but you also have to be aware, like, we have fire season. We have Santa Ana winds that make fire season worse. We go through cycles of drought. And of course, because of,
and we have earthquakes.
And we have earthquakes. And because of who I am, I'm always going to bring the conversation back to climate change. I've been working in sustainability for years and years and years at this point. And we're seeing those patterns increase and get worse, right? It was already bad in the 1800s, late 1800s, but 1800s impacting Thad, right? And now here we are so much time later. And because of climate change, those cycles are more extreme. They're happening faster. We need to be aware of that. We need to be ready for that. And we need to come together as community, as we've seen LA do, in these last couple of weeks, and take care of each other, take care of the land, listen to Indigenous people who know how to take care of the land properly, really take care of this place that we love so much, because it is wonderful and scary.
And if you think about it, LA has really only been around as a city with buildings for 150 years, which is a tiny, tiny amount of time. Think Thad's little city in the mountains could only exist for less than 40 years. And all those natural disasters that pummel it again and again, those are going to come to LA. Those already are.
Yeah, they are.
They're going to get worse.
They're going to get worse. And, I don't say that to make anyone feel scared or want to leave. Quite the opposite. I think it's important that we are aware of what we're dealing with climate change and how that specifically is going to impact LA, and that we protect each other and take care of each other.
Yay. This is a good spot to end it. So what are you working on? Where can people find you?
I am working on being a good and responsible human.
Yay.
And that's an ongoing journey. I am also about to be going to New Zealand in a couple of weeks, where I'll be,
I'm so excited.
getting some good content for the other podcast. And I'm pretty private on social media, but my public profile is my one on Blue Sky, which is Pajarito Botones, which means birdie buttons, if you translate it. And I don't really share a lot on there, but if you want to send me things, I want to know about it. So please do find me there.
Cool. I guess since there have been so many Our Flag Means Death references on the show, we should say that we do have another podcast called Our Flag Means Fanfiction. So if you too are a fan of Our Flag Means Death, you might want to check out that podcast too. And we have every month we do a Gay Pirate News Hour. And this time we're going to be having a few people participate from New Zealand. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
And I am working on bringing you more episodes of Haunted Hollywood Hour. We have a lot of things planned on the docket coming up. So keep on subscribing. Be sure to give us a rating and a comment or a review to let other people find this. If you enjoy this, tell your friends about it. And our little community is growing ever so much. Every time we put out a new episode, it grows a little more. So thank you guys who have been with us from the beginning, and those of you who are just coming on and binging all the past episodes. We hope you're enjoying it. You can always give us a little suggestion of what you'd like to see on here by emailing us at hauntedhollywoodhour@gmail.com. And follow us on Instagram at Haunted Hollywood Hour, all one word. Until next time.